end up speaking a lot to people about the context and the way in which they're expressing themselves. I call it exploring voice. Not surprising. These are the behaviors I look at. I look at self. You'll remember is that how independent I am in the way that I'm thinking and engaging, persuasive, how compelling I am, how the degree to which I'm overtly trying to influence people's thinking, excitement, how expressive I am in my emotions, restraint, how much I restrain that expression, communication, how clear I am in expectations and sharing information, feedback, how direct I am in letting people know where they stand. You can see in this profile, the self is the blue. So we have two really strong blind spots here. Her feeling like her name is Mariah. More frequently, she is being independent in her thinking and way of engaging. She is feeling like she is very frequently being persuasive. A little bit of a blind spot, particularly with peers and direct reports here. I feel like I'm being super clear in my communication. Agrees with everybody that I don't very often give people very direct feedback. Pretty close to agreement in here around how much expression I use emotionally. Pretty good agreement on, I tend to be more reserved, although boss and peers see a little bit more reserve. So you can see overall here, when I see a profile like this, I start asking questions. How are you feeling in terms of your ability to influence? How are people responding to your ideas? How are your direct reports doing in terms of performance, right? You just start exploring things to see what comes up in terms of inclinations you have about the profile. So let me tell you a little bit more about Maria. She's a VP of development. She's a fundraiser. She's a senior fundraiser. She's just recently been promoted. Really strong technically. She's a very strong fundraiser. And she's had great relationships with donors, and she's thought very highly of from a technical perspective. She didn't understand why as she got into this more senior level. And of course, she'd been in this organization for a while. She had lots of ideas. She thought, here I am with some great ideas from great field experience. And she wasn't winning hearts and minds. Couldn't quite figure that out. She also was excited about the team that when she got into the role, she really was feeling good about her team. But she was expecting stronger performance than she was seeing. So it's like, what's going on with that? And so we ended up really unpacking that and talking a lot about voice. So we settled on, this is where we split, right? She wanted to really work on persuasive with her boss and peers. And we talked a little bit about what it meant to convince people at her level and above versus when she was at the level below. And we talked about the importance of communication and feedback relative to performance, and especially when this group is getting used to a new manager. So that and again, we didn't try to flip the script so all of a sudden she was looking like all the time she was delivering an infomercial to her boss and peers. It's, to Drew's point, it's like, how can we work at the edge of those behaviors and the edge of your style to move the needle a little bit? We also talked about the muting impact of restraint. What I tell people about restraint is you can imagine that you're covered in cloth, right? And the higher you go on restraint, the more, the darker that cloth is, right? And people are trying to understand you without a lot of shifts in vocal tone, without a lot of change in expression or in nonverbal communication. I also tell people, by the way, when you're low on restraint, you're covered in clear mesh. They see everything, including the eye rolling, right? With all of our coaching, we also use the IDI, our motivational assessment. She was low on expressing on the IDI, which meant it wasn't incredibly energizing or comfortable for her to let it all hang out. So we worked on increasing her emotional vocabulary so that people had a better read on her verbally rather than expecting that she was going to emote if you will, in other ways. So that was Mariah. She's very fun to work with. And, you know, she was a good coachee, meaning she was all in.